Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Your magical kiss take me just so far. Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Don't leave me like this, dangling from a star. You set me all aflame and it's so pleasing. It sure would be a shame if you were only teasing. So my love, before I go, turn the lights way down low and talk to me. Talk to me, talk to me. Well, hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Don McKeag Show. We're glad to have you with us. We're here on Thursdays from 6 to 7. I also do a talk radio show on Cape Cod, WXTK, and that's 95.1 on your FM dial on Saturdays from 11 to 1, as I mentioned. We have a call number that will be on your screen. We'd be happy to hear from you. My desire here is to inform, educate, irritate, moderate, discombobulate, all sorts of lates, but the one thing I don't want to do is imitate. We're here to try to educate this population with some of the things that are the truth, not based on what people think today things should be, the way things should be. As I do before every show, both television and radio, I read a quote which is so important to the future of this country and to each and every one of you, your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors, your friends. It comes from Martin Luther. Young people, that's Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was a great man, but he was named after Martin Luther, a devout Catholic priest living in the 1500s who saw corruption in the church, the Catholic Church, which was the predominant Christian faith-based religion. And he confronted it, jeopardized his life. He was excommunicated, and the Protestant Reformation came about because of it. Now, just as those of you that listen to me on a regular basis, when I talk about the Democrats or anyone, it is not personalities I want to discuss, it is principles. And this is not about the Catholic religion. This is about the individuals that were running the Catholic Church. Our problem now is not with our form of government. Our problem is with the people who are running it and the principles that they say they stand for. And they are contrary to much of what the Founding Fathers developed this great country from. We come from a Christian Judeo background. That's right. Today, 76% of the American population considers themselves affiliated with the Christian religion or with the Jewish religion. We are tolerant, we are accepting of others, but we have now become doormats in terms of our own country to minority positions. So that's what I try to discuss. And Martin Luther, and I want to quote what he said in 1526. Imagine, that's almost 500 years ago. And it applies to people in the United States of America today. He said, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular. But he must take it because his conscience tells him it is right. Do we have a conscience anymore? We have a misdirected conscience. We have a media which selectively tries to undermine the major law enforcement of this country until they're in trouble personally. But we'll get to that later. On Saturday, it was the 73rd, hard to believe, I was just a babe, 73rd anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. As President Roosevelt said at the time, a day in infamy. Almost 3,000 people were killed at that time. Most of them Navy personnel, soldiers based there, and then some residents. They had a ceremony marking this tragedy where there were 96-year-olds and even a couple in their 102, I think, which is incredible that they lived through this bombing. You've seen pictures of it. They made a great movie called Tora Tora from the Japanese side of it. But it was a cowardly act. It was carried out as the Secretary of State was awaiting the Japanese ambassadors to come in. They were told not to because the attack was already underway. Do we have a conscience for all those people that we lost in World War II, excuse me, directly as a result of this bombing? We were negotiating in good faith. We were trying to stay out of war. We lost, I believe, over 1 million men and women in that conflict. Yet in my lifetime, I've seen the media and I've seen the side that I just have to continue to point accusatory fingers at, make us look bad. The Smithsonian Institute at one time, again, loaded with the liberal establishment now as our education system has become, tried to make us to blame, tried to make us look bad for dropping the atomic bomb, which killed hundreds of thousands of Japanese. They were warned time after time by President Harry Truman. All of the do-gooders forget all of the trauma that that man, Harry Truman, went through knowing what his decision to drop that bomb was going to do, along with military men. And yet, people in their own country forgot that the biggest reason for him dropping the bomb was it was a conservative estimate that if the war went on, the Japanese military had the people in a frenzy believing, as the Muslims today, I might add, when you hear they die like in 9/11, which is kind of ironic that that event mirrors in terms of the loss of life almost. I think there were over 3,100 lost in 9/11. But it came from extremists in the Muslim religion who were told they would have 100 virgins and they would be welcomed into by Allah and all of this. This is what we had with the Japanese culture. They were going to fight to the death. And President Truman was told that they estimated between 500 and 700,000 American soldiers would be lost if the war continued. So he opted to save Americans, knowing the loss of life, innocent life in Japan. Germans, innocent women and children were killed in Germany also when we bombed. But let's not forget what Hitler did to England and how many thousands of men, women, and children were killed innocently by the bombings by Hitler. What is it in this country where we have these fermenting people today, forgetting the sacrifices made by so many young men and women now? Young men my age who never have or older now. I was only a little boy. I was 2. But to think I knew neighbors. Everyone in World War II knew someone who died, either someone close in their family or a neighbor, or came back maimed. All the tragedy. And yet we have people that years later, when the storm cools down, write and paint a different picture. And they have no conscience about it. They have no, because you know what? Just as Martin Luther said, vanity, it's popular. Popular to criticize the great America. In the media it is, it's popular. They have no conscience about all of these families. Never mind the actual loss of the soldiers, sailors, Marines, pilots, and the Air Force, and the women and children left with no fathers. They have no conscience about it. They'd rather find fault with America. That's what we see now in today's press and why Don McKeag does this show. I know I can't do anything about it except, and I hear from all sides of people, all ages, and this has nothing to do with me personally or my ego. It has to do with why I and my good friend Ken Bukes, why we do this show. It's to inform, and what's better for me, what makes me happy, is to hear others say, at least someone is out there trying to tell the truth. Now you look at what they're doing to our Central Intelligence Agency right now and all the people who work there. Now, don't get me wrong, liberals. That's who it is. That's who's running this country. That's the mentality today. Evil America. Of course, we're not perfect. We should be disciplining those in the CIA ranks or those in the police ranks when something is done that's wrong. But to vilify the entire system, to vilify those who put their lives every day in the industry where you can be killed once your identity is shown. And I can't stop telling you the difference when there's a Democrat in office and when there's a Republican. if you've been following it as I have, you will see they are itching and they're trying, and they've thrown innuendos that this decision to waterboard and this torture, horrible torture. They forget the bodies that were ruined, the planes, the firemen that died, the police that died, the wonderful people trying to save lives, the priests that died. You people that are Democrats that follow for this, this is done by the press who follows the Democratic liberal agenda. I will keep hopping on this. You remember George Bush didn't even pardon the fellow that worked for him, and I forget his name, Kenny, you may remember, Sonny or Skippy or something, who supposedly gave out the name of a CIA agent, the wife of who turned out to be one of our ambassadors, who, of course, was not a practicing agent, hadn't been, and, of course, used to share with members of her cocktail party or others that she had worked and was working for the CIA. Doesn't matter when you're a Democrat. Now, isn't it convenient that the media would protect this one, excuse me, Kenny, would protect this one woman and stand up for the need for the CIA to be protected? And yet, now, of course, this report. And let's look at the president and John Kerry, to his credit. John Kerry wanted to hold up on releasing this report. Rightly so. They should have been able to digest it, make sure that the proper things were being released to protect the agency and those in it, not to cover up. That's all you hear now. And you listen to the major media stations, and they are all over it. They can't wait. Then let's step back to the poor police officers throughout this country, state, local, law enforcement agents everywhere. How can you continue to support this Democratic Party leadership? Not being a Democrat, I was a Democrat most of my life. But that was John F. Kennedy when he used to say, don't ask what the country's going to do for you. What are you going to do for your country? Think about it, Democrats. We're totally reversed now. We even give illegals all the rights of being an American. Haven't earned it. Haven't gone through the process. I'm a first-generation immigrant. My father came over, my grandparents. Doesn't matter today to this group. But no, John Kerry, Secretary of State, Obama wants it released. Why? He wants, again, attention focused off of him, for one thing, and also, deep down, the idea to make this country look bad, to undermine our agency that gives us security. You may not like spying. It's reality. It is a shameful attitude in this country. They continue. As I mentioned, the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. How much coverage did you see? Oh, yeah, they covered it here and there, and they showed, of course, they showed the president, they showed, Hillary Clinton. I noticed this. But they couldn't wait to get back and continue to cover these protests. These protesters are getting coverage. The black race is now coming out, not the people working every day, not the people that understand, and they are supporting basically a young man who was performing a criminal act. There is a tape which you'll never see. There's a tape available that shows the young man, a big kid for his age, accosting the clerk in a convenience store and stealing a box of cigars, which he was in the process of handing out. That's the primary. Then he attacks a cruiser. The boy ends up dead. Very sad, very unfortunate. But the press has now taken that, and all over the country, all of these uprisings, known, by the way, to be paid. Many of these people, they're not from the area. They said something like 80% of those people participate in Ferguson, the last few protests. They don't want, it's just like what I went through in Vietnam. All these huge protests. Vietnam was horrible. What they did to our soldiers was a direct result of the media and what they're trying to do again to this country. Does that please you, ladies and gentlemen? Does that please you to demean this great country? To demean Democrats, Republicans, independents, black, white, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, male, female, gay, straight, Americans, all of us? Does that please you to have the media beating up on this country? I had friends that came back from Vietnam. I have a brother-in-law that did 2 tours, of which I'm very proud. And they were spit on when they came back to this country. Why? Because the media. And who were doing all the hippies? All the ones smoking grass. All the ones not giving a thing to their country. It's a national disgrace. And it's fostered and festered by this media we have today. And I've said it before, the schools of journalism have professors that are liberally oriented. They have pushed the Democratic Party into socialistic behavior. Public employee unions are the only unions today that are growing. Why? Because there's no bottom line. We have a state right now that's just granted a board, appointed, of course, by politicians. The board has now offered and given raises. In the case of the new governors, it was $35,000 in terms of raise, but then $65,000 for housing, $100,000. And the others, the Attorney General, 71%. They have no shame. As Martin Luther said, no conscience. There is no conscience in Beacon Hill. None. None. I ran for office. There are a lot of people. I ran as a Republican, was soundly defeated on Cape Cod. Dukes County, which is Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, Woods Hole, Falmouth. The seat of liberalism, feel-good, tofu eating, bottled water, bike riding, better than us people, a lot of them. And their decisions now, whether it be the wind farm or others that are just over the top, that our kids are paying for now. We're paying big time for it. But getting back to the bombing of Pearl Harbor, I'll bet you didn't know this, Kenny. Are you there? Again, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it, and those who do not, you're making gestures, Kenny. Why don't you just tell me what you want?
Donnie, I want you to look over here where I am.
Well, that's what I am doing.
Now
you are. Oh.
But
I've been looking over here?
You were looking over there, and I was trying to get you to look over here.
You don't look too good today. I don't know what it is. Huh?
Don't worry about this monitor behind me. It's my job
we gotta
here
look
is to
good,
make
you know.
look good, and I make you look good. So let me add something to this Pearl Harbor thing.
This is Ken Bukes, by the way. He is wonderful work. He's a producer, but he also, and most of you know him for his Talk of the Town
Thank you. The award
show on Wednesday.
The award
wonderful show.
Donnie, what I wanted to add about Pearl Harbor, having been to Pearl Harbor for the first time in my life last year,
Correct.
what has happened this year, it was the very last ceremony held at the Arizona. They said that it is time. There were only 2 people that are survivors.
Yep.
And
One was 102, right?
100 plus.
Okay, yep.
And the other man was 90, 91, 92 years
Yes,
old.
that's right.
So they held a ceremony in San Diego where these people could get to the aircraft carrier on the Midway, and they held a ceremony on the Midway in California, which was a very moving tribute with these people there because they couldn't get to Hawaii naturally.
Right, right.
So I found that interesting that the government has said that they're not going to have any more ceremonies in Pearl Harbor. I don't think that should ever go away because too many people have forgotten about the Twin Towers in New York. It's no longer an issue now. They want to talk about waterboarding. They don't care about the 3,000 people that died in New York City that were diving out of windows because they didn't want to burn to death.
Now you know.
That's my
Now
little
you
diatribe,
know.
Donnie. My little diatribe.
But here's what I wanted to ask you, if you were not aware. See, I watch the documentaries. I can't stand the news because they are so, and it all came about through Ted Turner coming up with this 24/7 news.
Yeah, his CNN.
Yes. But anyway, here was something I saw in between. I watch the old movie channel since I'm old, but I like that there's no ads. Again, the suckers in the public, like the football games, my word, it's amazing they're able to fit the football game in between the ads. That being said, in between one of the movies over the weekend, which they showed some, the 40s movies and the war movies. And they're very well done, very well acted. But in between, they had this very interesting discussion that I have never seen, and I know why, and I'm going to mention it on my radio show this Saturday too. But to me, it's extremely telling to where the media in general has always been and will always be for whatever reason, and I have already said it because those people in journalistic schools, the educators of our journalists generally are of liberal bias, and they do not like complimenting the status quo. I mean, their whole, I think they've got to be deep down unhappy with themselves or with whatever. I will criticize like anyone else, whether it's my own kids or whether it's, I do not have that somehow ingrained feeling that if I admit I'm wrong or if I criticize one of my own, that makes me somehow a bad person. And we have too much of that. But in this particular film, a short film, I was amazed, but again, not amazed. Did you know that prior to this Japanese internment, which of course has been hugely criticized, and I'm not saying it was the greatest thing, but Roosevelt, they put these people in buildings, they did, and they were great American citizens and blah, blah, blah. Well, here's what came out of this particular short film. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, there were 66,000 Japanese in California, I believe.
Right, you're right.
Okay. And they were asked, this is after all of that devastation, all of the loss of life, they were asked if they would care to give up their Japanese citizenship and become American citizens. Now again, It's not black and white, Kenny. And I want to tell you people who are going to poo-poo what I'm going to say. I understand there are other factors. Family back in Japan, things of this nature. But only 4,500 of the 66,000 chose to do that, which led, I believe rightly so, led the authorities to say, we have to be careful. Because it was known, by the way, that there were Japanese spies that were living in Hawaii, that were living in California, coming and going, just like any other person, who were keeping, and this film showed all of the record keeping that was done by Japanese spies.
Right.
Therefore, there was such a loss of life. The entire Navy was put in an uproar. The government took the position they had better be careful not to have too many Japanese surrounding the area that may have sympathies for their homeland. Now, say what you will, I'm not saying that the internment was necessarily correct. But now I'm not saying it was necessarily wrong. And yet, have you ever heard that story? Have you ever seen that? This was actual film footage and actual meetings held over this.
I toured one of the sites in California, as a matter of fact, in 2011. I was visiting our daughter. Karen and I were visiting our daughter in San Diego. And we came upon there was like a sign at the side of the road, and she's a great tour guide, and she said, this is where the internment camp was during the Second World War for the Japanese
Right.
Citizens.
Right.
And she went into this whole story about it. And then I happened to see the same documentary that you're talking about.
Oh, you did see it.
I saw that as we came home. I was flipping through the channels one night, and I saw it on, I think.
Now, did you get the same
PBS.
reaction that I did?
Yes,
I mean,
I
that,
did. I came
and
to the
I
same
was amazed.
conclusion.
First of all, I was amazed it was ever shown. But again, why I'm so against and so adamant about the left is they only give you what's convenient for their position.
Correct.
And I say this to the black population, of whom I adore and have so many friends in the music and athletic business. I am not the slightest racist, you know that. But it will not improve until the black community says, hey, cut it out. There was law breaking. This is not, again, police should be held accountable. They should be fired.
That's right.
When they abuse any citizen, though. There again, how can you say you're for treating people equally if you then resort back to specifying a particular race? If a police officer is being abusive to anyone, it's the same thing with domestic abuse. Since when, I don't hear them, if it's in the white community, the Oriental community, same punishment, same crackdown. But you can't have it both ways, except when you're a liberal or when you're a Democrat. You get it both ways. They do not have a consistency, and they are anti-punitive measures unless it's convenient for their agenda. And that's the truth.
It's their choice.
Yeah.
They want to choose what they
Well,
want
they want the world to be the way they think it should be.
Right.
I know how I think the world should be, but I understand it can't be that way.
There's a lot of...
I want people to be just like me, and I know they can't be, Kenny.
There's only one Don McKeag.
There's only one. Thank
one.
God.
Thank God. But when it comes to police officers and abuse, it happens in the white community. It happens with the women in the community. It happens with their own wives. But you don't hear about it because basically the media chooses what they want to
Well, and they choose race. They are the biggest racist
Correct.
problem there is.
Correct. I agree with you 100%.
But now I will tell you, this is what I go back to you people in the service of your community police officers, in the service of your state troopers. I know this, Kenny. 20 years plus I've been on talk radio, mornings, and then now I have the regular Saturday show. And of all the government employees that I talk about and sometimes demean, like teachers and all, for good reason, not them personally, but the whole principle, police officers have the biggest tendency to vote Republican and to vote conservative because they have to deal every day. You know, we're talking about these kids roaming the streets, not about the fact that they have no home life, they have no fathers. And now we're talking about police officers who are carrying a gun who never know whether half of these people are stoned on something so that they're out of their minds anyway, or where their mindset is, and they're supposed to stand back and hope that they don't have to shoot somebody. And yet when they have to, now they're immediately questioned. And they're questioned in this case now today by the black community and nitwit leaders like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, who are nothing but extortionists, and they're in this whole thing for their own personal gratification, and they always have been.
You can take your military, and you can take your police, and you can take your fire, and you can put all three groups in the same group. Because the military guy doesn't know if he's coming home at night, if he's on the
Positively
on the firing line. The policemen and the firemen don't know if they're going to finish their shift and go home to their wives and their families. These people are due our utmost respect, and if we give them that
now it's
respect,
gone into education, teachers now. I mean, not to the same degree, and I don't buy this below, but I mean, it's legitimate now. I mean, a teacher doesn't know what's going to be in their classroom. No, and is it their fault? Is it America's fault? No. It's the family upbringing, and it's what they have believed in. And a lot of the families that in my age, I'll tell you who had the kids, those hippies that were on the pot, and you know, sex anytime you want, and they fathered kids, and the kids have turned out wacky like them in many cases. But nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about we have provided a fertile ground in the media in terms of movies, you know, the language we talked about. Did you see by the way, I was talking about Tom Brady and and there's been a big thing about it.
That came to mind.
Yep.
Sunday night.
I heard his answer, and I understand it to a degree, but I'm sorry, control is still control, and what you are to our young people is a very important thing. So, well, anyway, Kenny, that is got going on.
I didn't mean to take you off point. I'm sorry. I
you
just
didn't. No. But I'm glad you saw that. And again, that should be shown. How come they never show that on the major networks? About that just a mention of the no, because it refutes their position. They don't care. I just thought of the guy that was it Spider Libby was the
yes,
friend,
I was searching my head.
Friend of George Bush's, and George Bush really upset me. They didn't have the guts to pardon him. Bill Clinton pardoned one of the worst economic thieves in the world. Remember, he living on an island, and Clinton pardoned him.
It was one of those last-minute pardons as he was going out the door. I remember that. I just can't remember the name of the guy.
Well, again, getting back to what I wanted to consider. See, I remember things I guess a lot of you don't, because they don't want to. Liberalism is our real problem now. And I don't mean all liberals are kind people. But it's the ism. It's that whole idea of laissez-faire and going against law and order, except when it affects you and your family. Then you conveniently complain. But did you notice that Obama, Now, here's the double standard that the press loves to forget. I just mentioned about the CIA, that woman, of course, it was, that was an outrage that anyone could possibly expose a CIA non-agent, but of course now they can dump all over the CIA in general. But he also, if you remember, the 3 soldiers that were killed trying to find the deserter, you mentioned the military, and again, I don't know how military can vote for these Democrats and for this administration.
It's upsetting.
3 soldiers were killed trying to find that deserter.
Right.
And the deserter, of course, they had his father speaking the Muslim religion, and he was deserting to join the Muslim forces. 3 innocent kids. How'd you like to have your son killed? Never mind, it's bad enough for all of our young people over there in Afghanistan, wherever they are, to be killed by enemy. But to be killed because you're looking for an American who doesn't want to be an American.
A defector.
And then he gets back to his country and the president elevates him, and the press elevates him.
They're shielding him right now.
Yeah, they're shielding him. It's hidden.
Right.
Now, I have something I wanted to read regarding 9/11. This is a follow-up of the attitudes, and you just mentioned how people have forgotten. How are we on time, Kenny?
You have just about 18 minutes, Don.
Okay.
17 minutes.
Listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. See, this is the truth you get from people like me who aren't afraid to be wrong or found wrong. I want to find out if I'm wrong. But I'm going to tell you things that I believe you have to hear, if you care. You see, I say this all the time. This country now is down to, it's not Democrats and Republicans. It's not blacks and whites and every other thing. It's not independents. It's not gay and straight. It's not religion, it's not Catholic, Protestant, and Muslim. It's down to, are you rational or are you irrational? Does your mind do what the good Lord, I believe, gave us, and that is give you the ability to logically form an opinion? Or do you just form it on feelings? Is it just, well, it should be this way? Do you care enough to say, gosh, that's not what I really believe, but it's become obvious? And that's what we're losing with our young people, too. They've been brainwashed into thinking that the liberal side is the kind. Every time the Republicans are mentioned, they're bad. They don't want Social Security. Can you imagine? Now, just think logically. Do you think Republicans don't have elderly mothers and fathers? Do you think Republicans don't need retirement benefits? I mean, it is just pathetic. Well, this is a letter that was written by a pilot for American Airlines regarding how the media has turned around, and of course the president, and how they rise to the defense of the Muslim faith and the Muslim people. See, here's the double standard. Anything that comes out bad against America, they rise up against the entire group. I don't mean they're against America in every way, but they're against whatever that group is trying to do. And whatever any group, whether it be the military, the police, it becomes an overall criticism and critique of the entire organization. On the other side, as I said, they elevate the large group and say, oh, it's only a minority. I hope you can notice that, folks. Okay, this pilot for an American Airlines, no name calling, no hatred, no political agenda, Canadian, British, and American comments appear at the end of the article. A newspaper, this is the pilot. A newspaper stated that some Muslim doctor is saying we are profiling him because he has been checked 3 times while getting on an airplane. This is what the pilot answers to this. His name is Captain John Maniscalco. John Maniscalco. Been with the American Airlines for 25 years. I've been trying to say this since 9/11, but you worry me. I wish you didn't. I wish when I walk down the streets of this country that I love, that your color and culture still blended with the beautiful human landscape we enjoy in this country. But you don't blend in anymore. I notice you, and it worries me. This pilot is answering this complaint by this Muslim doctor saying that we are profiling him. I notice you because I can't help it anymore. People from your homelands professing to be Muslims have been attacking and killing my fellow citizens and our friends for more than 20 years now. I don't fully understand their grievances and hate, but I know that nothing can justify the inhumanity of their attacks. On September 11, Arab Muslims hijacked 4 jetliners in my country. They cut the throats of women in front of children and brutally stabbed to death others. They took control of those planes and crashed them into buildings, killing thousands of proud fathers, loving sons, wise grandparents, elegant daughters, best friends, favorite coaches, fearless public servants, and children's mothers. Remember that. Listen to that list of the people who were killed by these people. The Palestinians celebrated. The Iraqis were overjoyed, as was most of the Arab world. So I notice you now. I don't want to be worried. I don't want to be consumed by the same rage, hate, and prejudice that have destroyed the soul of these terrorists. But I need your help. As a rational American, interesting rational, trying to protect my country and family in an irrational and unsafe world, I must know how to tell the difference between you and the Arab Muslim terrorist. How do I differentiate between the true Arab Muslim Americans and the Arab Muslim terrorists in our communities who are attending our schools, enjoying our parks, and living in our communities under the protection of our Constitution, while they plot the next attack that will slaughter more of the same good neighbors and children? The events of September 11 changed the answer. It is not my responsibility to determine which of you embraces our great country with all of its religions, with all of its different citizens, with all of its faults. It's time for every Arab Muslim in this country to determine it for me. I want to know, I demand to know, and I have a right to know whether or not you love America. Do you pledge allegiance to its flag? Do you proudly display it in front of your house or on your car? Do you pray in your many daily prayers that Allah will bless this nation, that He will protect it and let it prosper? Or do you pray that Allah will destroy it in one of your jihads? Are you thankful for the freedom that this nation affords you? A freedom that was paid for by the blood of hundreds of thousands of patriots who gave their lives for this country. Are you willing to preserve this freedom by also paying the ultimate sacrifice? Do you love America? If this is your commitment, then I need you to start letting me know about it. Your Muslim leaders in this nation should be flooding the media at this time with hard facts of your faith and what hard actions you are taking in the community and as a religion to protect the United States of America. Please, no more benign overtures of regret for the death of the innocent, because I worry about who you regard as innocent. No more benign overtures of condemnation for the unprovoked attacks, because I worry about what is unprovoked to you. I'm not interested in any more sympathy. I am interested only in action. What will you do for America, our great country, at this time of crisis, at this time of war? I want to see Arab Muslims waving the American flag in the streets. I want to hear you chanting, Allah, bless America. I want to see young Arab Muslim men enlisting in the United States military. I want to see a commitment of money, time, and emotion to the victims of this butchering and to this nation as a whole. The FBI has a list of over 400 people they want to talk to regarding the WTC attack. Many of these people live and socialize right now in Muslim communities. You know them. You know where they are. Hand them over to us now. But I've seen little even approaching this sort of action. Instead, I have seen an already closed and secretive community close even tighter. You've disappeared from the streets. You've posted armed security guards at your facility. You have threatened lawsuits. You've screamed for protection from reprisals. There are very few male Arab Muslim representatives that have appeared in the media were defensive and equivocating. They seem more concerned with making sure that the United States proves who was responsible before taking action. They seem more concerned with protecting their fellow Muslims from violence directed toward them in the United States and abroad than they did with supporting our country and denouncing, quote, leaders like Gaddafi, Hussein, Farrakhan, and Arafat. If the true teachings of Islam proclaim tolerance and peace and love for all people, then I want chapter and verse from the Quran and statements from popular Muslim leaders to back it up. What good is it if the teachings in the Quran are good, pure, and true when your leaders are teaching fanatical interpretations, terrorism, and intolerance? It matters little how good Islam should be if huge numbers of the world's Muslims interpret the teachings of Muhammad incorrectly and adhere to a degenerative form of the religion, a form that has been demonstrated to us over and over again, a form whose structure is built upon a foundation of violence, death, and suicide, a form whose members are recruited from the prisons around the world, a form whose members, some as young as 5 years old, are seen day after day, week in and week out, year after year, marching in the streets around the world, burning effigies of our presidents, burning the American flag, shooting weapons into the air. A form whose members convert from a peaceful religion only to take up arms against the great United States of America, the country of their birth. A form whose rules are so twisted that their traveling members refuse to show their faces at airport security checkpoints in the name of Islam. We'll never allow the attacks of September 11 or any others for that matter to take away that which is precious to us, our rights under the greatest constitution in the world. I want to know where every Arab Muslim in this country stands. And I think it's my right and the right of every true citizen of this country to demand it. A right paid for by the blood of thousands of my brothers and sisters who died protecting the very Constitution that's protecting you and your family today. I'm pleading with you to let me know. I want you here as my brother, my neighbor, my friend, as a fellow American, but there can be no gray areas or ambivalence regarding your allegiance. It's up to you to show me where you stand. Until then, you worry me. Now, I hope you heard that. There it is. And just remember the comments that are made against America. Remember the comments, by the way, President Obama's minister made from the pulpit. Just remember that, folks. A hatred for America from the pulpit. Is that where we're going? Is that where the black population wants to go? a hatred for the United States? Does this media forget the hundreds of thousands of lost black lives in our wars, in our streets? What happens to the black police officers, the black firemen? There are hundreds of thousands of them. What happened to that wonderful little lady whose bakery was burned down in Ferguson? Youth sympathizes with the protesters. What about that? This is the kind of thing that I'm going to continue to put out here to offset the major media that constantly, nightly, promotes the agenda of the criminal, of the other side. It's always the person that's in charge that's at fault. How would you like to get in a cruiser every single day and never know what's going to happen? I'm talking mostly in the inner cities. And your wife and family worrying about it. Is that worth anything to you, that there are people willing to do that for you and me? Or do you want to listen to these nitwits that want to castigate the entire system? They want to handcuff the Central Intelligence Agency. How many lives do you suppose were lost by this boob that's being given, sanctuary in Russia? You happy with that? Is that right? Anyway, I'm all fired up. And it's that time, right, Kenny? The lunatic McKeag has done another hour of bellowing.
Another minute before you finish it.
Another minute? Well, hopefully you will tune into the radio. We do some fun things. We are going to have some more guests on here. It's kind of tough this time of the year, and I hope all is well. God bless each and every one of you, and God bless America. I wear this tie because without everything our past relatives, friends, neighbors did, we wouldn't have this. I wouldn't have the ability to be doing a show like this. Some might think that'd be a good idea. Anyway, thanks for watching, and be careful out there in the shopping world. It's a dangerous place. Hold on to your wallet. It's the Don McKeag Show. Good night, and God bless.